morning, everybody. This is Jim Hawke from Team Hawke Realty. Today I'd like to continue on talking about the selling process, but today I really want to get into details about the listing agreement that you're going to sign at the time of listing. There's really two parts to the listing agreement. Number one is the listing agreement itself, and the second part is going to be basically the data sheet, which is going to talk quite a bit about the house itself, like what the features of the house have. The listing agreement is pretty detailed, and I want to go over some of the definitions and some of the clauses that are in that agreement. So when you do get to the point of signing, you're very comfortable with what you are going to be signing at that time. So the listing agreement itself, at the very beginning of it, it outlines the name of the real estate brokerage that's going to be doing the listing, the correct spelling of your names, the address of the property, the date that the property is listed, and the term of the mandate, which would be the expiry date of the listing if it has not sold at that time. The listing is a date that we can discuss with your agent. If you decide to list your house longer than 6 months, there is a location that must be initialed, acknowledging that you understand that the listing has been set up for a longer period than 6 months. The next thing we talk about is the price, and that's something that we've already talked about, going through the looking at the comparables and deciding what is the best price for you. The next place that we're going to be initialing is there's an area that just asks whether or not you've signed a listing with another company, and we want to make sure that you haven't listed your property with two different companies. That just puts you in a situation where you could be paying double commissions, and nobody wants that to have that happen. Next, we're going to talk about the definitions that are on the listing agreement. The very number one, that definition just talks about who a buyer is, who a seller is, what the listing agreement is, what a purchase agreement is, so you have a general understanding of all the terms that are going to be used as we're going through the listing process. The second clause in the listing agreement, it deals with the commissions. Now, every agent can negotiate the commissions charged, unless there is a bylaw within their company, their brokerage or their corporation, that dictates a commission that has to be charged. There's a total commission that outlines what the total commissions for the sale of the property will be. And then there's going to be a commission that's going to state what the cooperating broker's commission will be on the property. So an example, if you were to list your property at 5%, typically 2.5 of that will go towards a cooperating broker's commission. Not every agent does that. I know there are some companies out there that may list a property for 5%, and they might take 3% for themselves to offset the cost of the listing and give 2% to the cooperating broker, the buyer's broker. We really, at Team Hawke, we really focus on splitting this 50-50. And in some cases, we've even gone the opposite direction, where we've listed a property, and to entice an agent to get the property sold, we've offered the cooperating broker even a little bit higher percentage, just so that they could entice another agent to maybe get the house sold if we need to really act on something quickly. But typically, I would say in a lot of cases, you're going to see that being split 50-50, but it's really a discretion that the listing brokerage can use to see what they feel is best suited for them. The next thing we talk about is the holdover clause. Now, this is a period that once the listing has expired, if it hasn't sold during the term of the listing, it just protects the listing company from a buyer coming to you the day after and offering to buy your property without real estate commissions. Quite often with us, we put a 90-day holdover clause on our listing agreements. That just protects the brokerage. So if somebody comes to you, a few days after the listing is expired and they want to buy it without commissions, you should notify us that that's what your intent is, and we can discuss, something fair and equitable for everybody. Because at that point, you'd have to wait 90 days in order to sell to that person. The only time that this holdover clause would be eliminated is in a situation where you listed the property with another company. Once a new listing agreement has been established with another company, then the holdover clause is null and void, and you're free to do whatever you want to do at that time. So we just want to make sure that everything's fair for everybody. Representation, the listing agent must explain how they're representing you as a seller. There's two different kinds of representation. There's single representation. An example of single representation is where, Team Hawke Realty were to list your property and an agent from another company, Century 21 Remax, Royal LePage, whoever it may be, were to bring an offer, then Team Hawke Realty would be strictly representing you in that transaction, and the other brokerage would be strictly representing the buyer in that transaction. That's single representation. Dual representation, this is a little bit different. So this is when the listing brokerage will be representing both the seller and the buyer. And honestly, this does happen very often. So listing broker must obtain written consent from the seller as well as the buyer, and must be impartial when representing both the seller and the buyer equally, to protect both parties' interests at all times. As agents, we have a duty of full disclosure to both buyer and seller in this instance. And we always have that disclosure whenever we're representing a buyer and a seller, even in a single representation. So that's the third part, and that's something that's you really want to understand when you're going into the process. I know most agents that I've dealt with are very good at representing parties under dual agency and single agency. So it's really well addressed out within our industry. The fourth clause is finder's fees. Now, some banks and mortgage companies, they offer rewards or referrals incentives for different agents that direct business their way. So as agents, we are allowed to collect that money, but when we do collect that money, we do have an obligation to let you know that we are receiving a finder fee, and let you know how much it is, and if that's going to be in addition to the compensation from the commissions that we get from listing, or if there's going to be something that we're going to maybe do in your favor as well. So that's something that will be discussed at the point of a listing, or an offer, especially if we know that's going to be happening. Number 5, when the property is listed, the seller should always make the agent aware of any inquiries that come to the seller. So if we list your house, we put a for sale sign, you're out raking the lawn, doing your spring cleaning, someone drives by and says, I'd really love to take a look at your house. I strongly advise against that. You don't know if this person is a real qualified buyer, or if this is someone that may be going into your house to stock it out to maybe come back later. I really, really don't recommend anybody allowing any strangers into their house without a real estate representative present. If someone does come to the property, it's always a good idea to just hand them a business card and say, look, this agent is representing me and the sale of my house. I'd really prefer if you contacted them directly and have them take you through a private viewing. And then that way we can take care of it, make sure they're qualified, and make sure that they are really solid buyers. Marketing, this is number 6. This allows us the right to show prospective buyers to the property, exclusive right to put up a for sale sign on the property and advertise the property for more prospective buyers to get your house sold. So this gives us the right to market the property. Number 7 is a warranty. This clause lets us know that you have the exclusive right to sell the property, that there isn't a third party in the background that needs to sign a listing agreement in order for you to sell the property. So we want to make sure that all the proper legal authorities are signing at the time of listing the property. Indemnification and insurance. Touch wood, in 30 years, I've never had an issue with this situation at all. But it is a clause in the listing agreement that doesn't hold the real estate agents responsible if something were to be lost or stolen during a showing of the property. So again, we always recommend to everybody, any valuables, please put them away, lock them in a safe, put them somewhere, bring them with you, whatever you need to do, but don't leave money laying around, don't leave expensive jewelry sitting on a dresser. I mean, it could be something as innocent as a young child going in and picking it up and putting it somewhere else in the house that you can't find right away. So we really don't want any of these things to happen. Family Law Act is number 9. So that just says that spousal consent is not necessary to sell a house. So if it's a matrimonial home where it's two spouses that are on title, we need both signatures in order to sell the property. So we always want to make sure that both signatures are on there. If they're not on there, we need to, at the time of doing an offer, there's a part there for spousal consent. So we need to make sure that the spouse signs that we can't sell the house without all the signatures on the property. Number 10, verification of information. That just gives us the right, if we need to go to the town to look for any information from the town, the planning department, the building department, if we need to go and get septic documents from Tiny Township or Tay Township in order to facilitate the sale of the property, that gives us the right to go to these places, generate the information that we need to help get your property sold. Number 11 is use and distribution of information. This gives us the consent to collect and disclose personal information by the listing brokerage for the purposes of marketing the property. So again, we're going to be trying to get a little bit of information on the property, maybe looking for surveys, as much information as we can to help facilitate a sale, because when we're working with buyers, the more information that we have, the better you're going to be served in order to get your property sold. So we may need heat and hydro costs, we need tax information, we need assessments. So all that information is very important to have at the time of listing, but if we don't have it, then it gives us the right to go in and do some further investigating and find that information. The next place that we're going to need to initial is a consent or to not consent to other agents contacting you upon the expiry of the listing. So an example of that is if your house was listed till May 30th, June 1st, if you say you do not consent to having agents call you, then no agents can contact you. You've eliminated that. If you say that you do want other agents to contact you after expiry, then that allows the rest of the agents within our board to give you a call on June 1st or after to ask if you're interested in selling your property with them. I'll be honest, in all the years I've been in the business, I've had one person that actually consented to doing that. Everybody else doesn't want a bunch of real estate agents contacting them after closing and calling them all hours of the evening. So number 12 is successors and assigns. That just basically says that the heirs, executors, administrators, successors, assigns are bound by the listing agreement. So and it's the same with an agreement of purchase and sale. So if you've listed your property and something were to happen to you during the term of the listing, then the listing is still an effective listing. I mean, as agents, we're going to look at every situation, and if it's something that the family needs to take the house off the market, I mean, from my perspective, I would do whatever the family wanted me to do at that time. It'd already be a difficult time without having to add more stress to anybody's life. So we would work with the family to do what was best for the family. Number 13, conflict or discrepancy. If we add any conditions or any clauses to the listing agreement in a schedule, then they're going to supersede anything that we've talked about in these clauses today. So if we added that, if we added a clause, I'm just trying to think of a good example, that the agent is responsible if something were to be lost or stolen, then that would make the agent responsible if something were lost and stolen, as opposed to not being, right now we're indemnified. By putting that in, we wouldn't be indemnified. And then it'd be up to the agent as to whether or not they wanted to take on that responsibility. Number 14 and number 15 talk about electronic communication and electronic signatures. So in today's world, we do a lot of DocuSign as an example of a program that we use. So I could DocuSign you a listing. You could sign it without even actually physically signing. It would just be all done through the computer without even printing. You can sign it, date it, initial it, all computer generated signatures and initials. Have it sent right back to me without us having to do anything physically in front of each other. So that gives us the right to do that and make those signatures legal. We can also do that when we're negotiating an agreement of purchase and sale. So it does make things a little bit easier from that perspective, especially for people that are living out of town or even out of province. Schedules, number 16, that's where if we wanted to add any other schedules or any other conditions, that's where we can do that. And next, we just get down to signing. If you're happy with everything else that we've talked about in this to this point, then we sign and date the agreement of purchase and sale. We make you, or sorry, the listing agreement. We make you a copy, so you have a copy in your possession as well. And then we start the marketing, order the photography, the social media, do all the things that we've been talking about as well. And the next thing is we get your house sold. If you have any questions about anything I've talked about today, please feel free to give one of my agents a call, 705-527-7877. Please keep smiling and enjoy all the blessings that come into your life today. Thank you very much.